Welcome to this Eden webinar, as mentioned, part of the Eden Open Education Week. This webinar is organized by NAP, the Network of Academics and Professionals, integral part of Eden, and it's about open educational practices as a catalyst for innovation. During this webinar, you will see some presentations and good practices from experts in this field from Europe, and you will see various approaches to open educational practices. Feel free to say in the chat where you are from. We always like to see where the participants are coming to see our webinars, so feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you are from, and don't forget to use the Q&A if you have specific questions for our speakers, and we will try to keep up with all the questions and try to answer them in written or live. Also, please allow me to congratulate all women. Today is International Women's Day, and I'm very happy that we have three wonderful ladies here with us, successful, strong women who will show us what work they have been doing. But I'm sure that we also have wonderful women in the participants list, and I'm happy to see that we have people from different parts of the world, from Germany, Romania, France, from Ethiopia, from Morocco, from Croatia. So this is good to see that we have a good variety of participants. Let me very briefly make an introduction. So, as I mentioned, the session is about open educational practices, and I will briefly introduce each of our speakers soon. The speakers are Fabio Nascimbeni, Diana Andone, Carmen Holotescu, and Fiona Schmidbauer. And about NAP, I mentioned that Eden NAP is the organizer of this webinar. The Network of Academics and Professionals is a department of Eden Digital Learning Europe, which is focused on the networking component of specialists in and around Eden. And we focus on professional collaboration and knowledge sharing, trying to gather as much knowledge possible and sharing it with the members of the network. We are organizing monthly webinars, and you might have participated in this type of webinars, but we are also preparing different types of activities. If you want to be part of our webinars as a moderator or as a speaker, we are running a questionnaire which is included in all the Eden monthly newsletters, so please feel free to check that out. Okay, so that was enough from my side. I'm going to introduce the first speaker. I forgot to introduce myself as I usually do. My name is Vlad Mihaescu, and I am the chair of the Network of Academics and Professionals, the steering committee chair, and also I am a member of the management board of Eden, and I'm coming from the Polytechnica University of Timișoara in Romania. So now it is my great pleasure to introduce our first presenter, our first speaker, and he is Fabio Nascimbeni. He works as human capital development expert at the European Training Foundation, where he focuses mainly on digitalization and learning innovation activities. He's also a senior fellow of Eden, and he has been involved for many years with activities regarding Eden and also the e-learning community. So without further ado, Fabio, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I already shared my screen. I hope you can see me and hear me. It's a big pleasure to be here, not only because it's a webinar by Eden, but because it is a webinar by the Eden NAP. And I am a big fan of the Network of Academic and Professional and of its value for all the community working actually in this field in Europe and beyond. Now, I say beyond because it's since a couple of years, I've left a bit the academic life where I was focusing on open education and open educational practices, and I moved to the European Training Foundation. I'm telling this, first of all, to promote the European Training Foundation, which is not known to typically people working in the field of distance learning. We are a EU agency supporting transition and supporting reform in education and training, also considering innovation as a key element in the countries around Europe. And this is where we work. So you can see here all the countries in the enlarged EU neighborhood. I'm telling this not only to of course, promote my organization, but to start to set a bit the context of this short presentation, actually, because as you can imagine, since I moved to the ETF, I've been, let's say, still working and pushing for open educational resources, open licenses, and open educational practices in my work. Now, here a few things where I'm working on, where we are working on at the ETF, and I was looking for the role of open educational practices here, and then I will go a bit more in depth on what I am learning, what I've been learning in this couple of years as far as open educational practices in the countries around Europe is concerned. The first thing is, if you look at the typical areas of a digital education reform that are depicted now in the slide, I won't go in detail, but this is a sort of a snapshot of the many areas where you can actually intervene, where policymakers can intervene to make education more inclusive, more effective, to improve its quality through technology and through digital technology. Actually, if you look at all of these things, actually, open education and open educational practices fit everywhere. So it's I've done this experiment before. If you go for assessment, digital competencies of learners, credentials with open badges, of course, educational resources, of course, pedagogy. So open educational practices is fully transversal to any element of an ideal digital education reform. So this is the first point, which I think is rather important. Second point, we are supporting a community of innovative educators from our partner countries, the countries I showed before, and of course, open also to anybody, to other countries, so feel free to join if you want. It's a rather large community. And especially what we did last year is we launched a collection of innovative teaching and learning practices. You know that the Commission, the ETF, EDEN, we are continuously trying to collect and analyze and foster sharing of teaching and learning practices. This time, actually, we received more than 800 practices, which is a rather large number. And later on, I will show you in a moment the level of openness and what we found in these practices in terms of open educational practices. Finally, important point that is very much connected with open education and open educational practices is the issue of digital inclusion that we work a lot on. Of course, we are working on transition economies, so most of our countries actually have an issue with digital inclusion, which, that, as we know, is not only getting a device and getting connected, but it's having the capacities and the understanding to use the web in a relevant way for learning. Now, having said this, so OEP are practically everywhere when you look at policy, or could be everywhere, could find a place everywhere. They are very much connected with digital inclusion, but let's see what we found when we looked in the 800 plus practices that we received. We have analyzed them specifically looking for elements of open educational practices. We use the famous definition of Wolf, Ehlers, and Camilleri from a project of a few years ago. And then, of course, we look for the different openness dimension in a rather broad way. And we found actually these 5 points. The first is open course design. I will go one by one later. The second is use of complete self-defined online courses, typically MOOCs. The third is educators who are teaching by using open education resources. The fourth, and this is pretty interesting, the use of virtual reality and extended reality simulations, especially within vocational training. And the last one, the use of open assessment practices. Now, let's go quickly one by one. Now, Open course design is most probably, in my understanding, in my perception, the highest impact activity that an educator can do when he or she wants really to open up his courses or her courses. This basically deals with discussing with your students the content, the curriculum, and the approach even before starting the course. Now, this is really co-designing a course with your students, and it is proven to have a very strong impact on motivation, engagement, and retention, and of course, academic achievement. Now, there are many cases of this. We found some cases of this in the practices that we collected, and this was already a very good sign. The use of MOOCs and online courses is also on the rise. You can see here some numbers, and here the keyword is reuse. We found a number of educators, even outside higher education, who are actually using courses or pieces of courses in their teaching. So without having to duplicate, without having to, let's say, rethink about the development of content. This is, we found this particularly relevant when it comes to language learning. So English courses, French courses, we have a very nice practice from Morocco using MOOCs produced between France and Morocco on this. But this, again, is another kind of open educational practices which can thrive. The third one, teaching with OER. OER are pretty present in the practices we collected, and as you can see there, this is not only about the focus on OER, but it's about teaching with OER. So we know, and we will hear later on, I'm sure, from my co-panelist about what it means to teach with OER, all the different nuances of this. And here the keyword, of course, is curate. So when the material is, when you're using and aggregating existing material, the main competence needed by the educator is the curation one. Virtual reality simulation, and this is an interesting area where we did not expect, we were not expecting to find a high number of practices. And here I would like to put forward a rather new concept. I don't know if you heard of this, is the concept of OXR, so Open Extended Reality Resources. Actually, I don't know how familiar you are with the word of extended reality applications, so virtual reality, augmented reality. This is typically, is not dominated yet by large companies. You have a lot of small companies, and we have, of course, an issue of interoperability of resources. When a school, for example, is buying a system, then normally it's the school is confined to that specific system. So in this field, in this niche field, which is less and less a niche, actually the idea of openly licensed, but also technically open resources is now gaining ground. So this is a call I'm making to the open education community, actually, to look specifically into extended reality communities and extended reality ecosystems, because there is a lot of space, I believe, to push for not only open educational resources, but actually open extended reality resources. Finally, last point, open assessment, which is, let's say, it closes, if we start from design, this closes a bit the classical learning process. And actually we found in these practices a number, in the practices we received, a number of open assessment ideas, open assessment practices. And this, again, is can be very relevant. Here we're talking about non-disposable essays, we're talking about real-life assessment, we're talking about asking students to show what they've learned by publishing on blogs, by publishing on Wikipedia or on other wikis. So this is really testing what the students have learned in real life situations, making them closer, of course, to labor market and real life dynamic. Last slide, some conclusions. So everything I presented to you comes from some findings and some reflections, not academic findings. We are still, let's say, analyzing the data, and these more than 800 practices submitted by individual educators in many languages. So imagine the amount of work, but still it comes from around Europe. So of course we have here countries which are pretty developed in terms of digital education. We have Turkey, we have Israel, but still we have also countries, we have the Western Balkans, but you also have countries which are definitely transition economies. And so let's say these are, I would say, some ideas and some conclusions, some views from, I would say, around Europe. I'm not saying that this is not applicable to Europe, but still, it's that's where it comes from. So the first conclusion is that, and we should not forget, COVID has brought digital inclusion in the forefront. Now, before the COVID pandemic, we were talking about including disabled, we were talking about including disadvantaged group. Now, COVID has shown that all of us can be excluded. All of us can be disadvantaged when it comes to digital education in specific settings. So here, my message is we must keep digital inclusion in the forefront of the debate. It cannot just go away as it was before. Second point, open educational practices, so the way we know them, are gaining ground, but typically this happens without the label. So we have educators using OER, using openly licensed resources that don't even know what OEP means. They just do it. And here the question is not so much, I think, to discuss with them that this is OEP, they don't really care, but the question is how to scale this up. Typically, again, this is linked to the single willingness and motivation of the individual educator. Third point, interest is there from policymakers. We have seen this we see this daily every time we speak with governments and with ministers of education, that there is an interest for open and inclusive practices. And here the case is how to transfer successful open education policies. I still have in mind the famous OER policy from Poland, like basically saying every school book should get openly licensed. Now we are trying to push for similar things also around Europe. And finally, the fact that some embryonic open education communities do exist in the countries around Europe, but typically they are not enough connected internationally. So we are doing an effort now with the community of innovative educators to try to connect people working not only on digital education, but on open education with international communities like Eden. A few links, of course, you will find them in the slides. This is what I've been talking about. Feel free to contact me, and the more we can do to connect communities and to connect better understanding of OEP from countries around Europe with what happens in Europe and internationally, that's what we are here for. Thank you very much. And last point, it seems to be very impolite from our side that a man spoke first in the Women's Day, but actually this was specifically to leave the floor then to my three colleagues, women. So no more men from now until the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Fabio, for a very nice presentation. You touched some very nice points, and I appreciate also the timing. Well, you will still hear one man, that's me, because I will still be introducing our lady speakers. But yes, we started with Fabio, a gentleman, just so that we can move on then to the three ladies. So I remind you all that you can write questions either in the or in the Q&A. Fabio, you can see a nice comment by Fiona in the chat about VR and XR and accessibility. It's not necessarily a question. And I will come back to the Q&A at the end of the session. So now I move to the second speaker, and as mentioned, now we will have the pleasure of hearing ladies. And this first lady has been my colleague, boss, and mentor for the past 15 years. And she's also deeply involved with Eden, being former vice president of the executive committee, fellow with plenty of awards. Of course, I speak about Diana Andone, the director of the e-learning center from the Politehnica University of Timișoara. She's involved in many international associations related to e-learning, and I'm sure that people who are in the business of e-learning have ran with her name in the past. So Diana, it is my pleasure to give the floor to you, and please tell us what you prepared. Microphone.
Thank you very, very much for this, Vlad. It's really a big pleasure, and I like the mentoring part. I'm really glad. I think we both learn from each other, and as we learn constantly from everybody else. And I was so happy to see Fabio starting mentioning about the open education practices and principles, which is exactly what I'm going to speak also today. So going about the open education principles and co-creation of digital competencies with the view from students and also with a view from the professors, as I'm going to speak in this, I think it's my fifth or sixth Eden open week. So I'm very, very happy for this, that I can also speak again. I'm coming from, as also Vlad, from the Polytechnical University of Timișoara in Romania. I'm the director of the e-learning center. We celebrate this year 25 years since its establishment. We are looking very much forward on the improvements of digital education, not only for our university, but also for our region and for several partners which we have in the country and abroad. Our university is part of European University Alliance, which is called UDRES, together with 9 other countries. I mean, we are in total 9 other countries, coming from north to south and from east to west. And I think we are quite a good gathering of experts and specialists, we are looking very, very much towards our smart and sustainable regions. That's the main focus of our European University Alliance. And I need to say that open education, open science, and open innovation is one of the core values which UDRES as an alliance values and also promotes, and it's using in everyday activities. Something about the open education and how you involve students to become co-creators. Everything starts all the time with the assignment. Wiley, back in, I think in 1995, 1997, mentioned quite clearly that we need to look at renewable assignments for our students instead of those disposable assignments. Literally, for us as a university, we throw away, if we are not looking at disposable, only at disposable assignments, about 2 million hours of work on each semester, which is, we consider not a valuable thing. From quite a long time, even when I was a student many, many years ago, in engineering education, the idea of renewable assignments existed because quite a lot of the assignments which you were doing with the students were in fact project work coming from companies or from labs or from different ideas in research projects in which the professors were involved. So they were not completely thrown away, but that was quite something which was done in engineering education and not necessarily to be so open and so reused. What we came with about, I think almost 15 years ago, 14 years ago, was the idea of transforming this idea of renewable assignments into open educational resources, where you need to have a bit more care as a professor on how you promote this to your students and how you create the full assignments, coming from the idea up to the assessment of the assignment with your students. In this case, you need to look very much into the topic selection, and you need to be able to indicate a sort of structure and idea on how this will be done, maybe to even give some information about graphics view, about how the student need to present this and so on. Why? Because if you are doing it like that, the final result will be able to be submitted by the student in an editable format, not necessarily, I don't know, a PDF or a PowerPoint or something like that, but I'm speaking more or less about, in engineering terms, about files which can be then edited in dedicated software according to each specialization. That will mean that each result which you will have will be able to be implemented after that, either in the lab, either used in the course, either being modified by the next year students on a new material with new information and new edit. This is why it's so important to have the file also in editable format, which can be re-edited by the new students or by other students in the following years, or even by the professor to have a full version which then can be reused. A special attention obviously needs to be added to the content licensing, because if it is really in open license with Creative Commons, then quite a lot of the information needs to be more carefully looked after. And if it's not fully open or Creative Commons license, because especially in engineering, you might be using quite powerful software or powerful examples or powerful machines which you need, they are proprietary, then you need to be very careful on how to adapt and how to be able to use that. Very important is that this, besides of being a renewable assignment, this will become an assignment which is adapted periodically as a resource, either a learning or a research resource. How you are doing this, obviously, for example, that's a methodology which we created in our university, and it's working quite well across different topics and different subjects and specialization, and also different levels of degree, because we started with this, especially at master level, but now it's implemented also at bachelor level, and probably not with first or second year students, but when the students get more into completely, how to say, specialized content and specialized idea, because there are a lot of new resources and a lot of new content constantly needs to be created and adapted in today's engineering education. So what they do, beside of understanding, obviously, and being able to analyze and synthesize their content and their subjects which they are learning about, or the information about different equipments or technologies which they are learning about, is they need to understand something more about multimedia creative tools and about digital tools. So it's also enhancing their digital competencies and their digital publication abilities, because they will need to edit it. It's either probably a video or an animation or a different material which is showcasing the result and trying to explain it. So they will still need a lot of digital tools beside the normal tools which they will use in their specialized subject. Then they also need to understand something about Creative Commons licenses. You will be surprised, and I'm very sure this is not only the case of my university, how little students know about Creative Commons license. So this is a good opportunity for them to really understand fully this and how this can be used also in the future in their workplace. The evaluation which we always try, beside of the evaluation of the professor, which is giving grades, is marking the assignment as a full assignment for their education and competencies, and for the course which he or she is teaching, is the evaluation by colleagues, either with instant feedback or with other forms of evaluation, which is always very much appreciated by the student. Then obviously the publishment. How do you publish this? You encourage the student to publish it probably also openly in different international repositories, or with new tools, or in new areas. But also you will publish it inside your own university, like it's us virtual campus, or your own university learning management system, where it can really become an educational resource for the next year students, or for the colleagues which probably haven't been able to tackle fully that small concept on which the assignment is given sometimes. As I said, what the students learn is basically a lot of new tools and concepts, and also how to publish and reuse using Creative Commons license. You see several examples in these photos taken over the years. And here is something about how the students usually publish this. It's obviously sometimes in international repository scholar articles, in blogs, in public presentation. You can see one example here. Some of them are fully recognized by the university in the newsletters, in social media, and so on. So they get a lot of recognition and validation from that, which is, I can say, a strong motivational point for our students. For example, also in the pandemic, but before that, we've been using a lot in our development of the digital education, the students as co-creators of tutorial and guides. About 40% of our tutorial and guides in our digital education system in the universities are co-created by students and with a lot of information. How you develop competencies for educators for the open education. I will come with 2 ideas and 2 project results, which are openly to share for everybody, and I will strongly encourage you to do that. One, it's Academia, which is augmented teaching through blended learning, is done by several technical universities, Polytechnica from countries from Portugal, Spain, Romania, Italy, and Greece, and Ireland, which is the only one which is not a fully technical university, but they are those which are teaching, the group involved here is the group which is teaching the technical subject. So we are very large universities, very powerful and very well known, which we are more or less traditional universities, brick and mortar universities, which were looking on how to accelerate the digital education and the digital adoption of the tools and the support and methods for our universities and staff. We are now almost finishing the project, and one of the results which we have at this moment is what we call is the Academia mentoring and handbook and course, which is open, where a strong part is about digital learning resources, and a full chapter is dedicated to open education resources, tools, and practices, where we have been trying to encourage our colleagues and professors, not only from engineering education, but from all of other topics, to look at how to build up fully digitally learning resources, which can be open or can use open practices. The other one is Open Digital Competencies Training for School Educators, a project which we initiated last year with Moodle. Moodle Spain is the coordinator of this, and we have partners from us, from Spain, obviously, from Greece, and from Croatia and Norway. What we have done in this project, more or less, is trying to create the idea of open digital competencies and how these open digital competencies from educators, which are based on the digital competencies for educators as established by the European Commission, can be influenced by the uptake of online education, and also how this approach can really improve the open education principles in schools, especially, which is not in higher education. For this, we have created 6 courses. All of 6 courses are really looking at these open digital skills and competencies. They are based on the ABC to LD learning design methodology, which was developed probably about 10 years ago by University College London, and all the partners in the project have been using this in a previous Erasmus project, and it's probably one of the core methodology which we use in our university also to train, but also for further development by the professors on their courses, especially when we are looking at the digital education. These courses are obviously about Moodle, because Moodle is the core platform which is used in quite a lot of schools and also higher education in Europe. And we have been trying to look at how the ABC to LD, which is a completely open and interactive learning design methodology, can be implemented with Moodle tools and Moodle facilities. Then also how to teach with open digital tools, of course, which we have been producing. Then about new assessment models, which are quite challenging nowadays, and especially if you are speaking about open principles. The open digital education ecosystem as a way which is more dedicated for school managers or administrators, or for those which are the policymakers, to try to see how you can do and what sort of activities you can do to really improve the uptake of open education in your schools. And then diversity and inclusion in education, and obviously climate change in education and some environmental information which can be tackled through open education. They are all available in Moodle Academy, and you can see here 2 screenshots of those. They are openly accessible for everybody. The co-create course with ABC Learning Design, which is a general course which will encourage you on learning how to use Moodle for learning design. And this, for example, is the teaching with open digital tools which are there. And all of them are going to be ready by the end of this month, beginning of April. Where you can all take it. Obviously, I will need to say something about what we in our university were doing about open. We have quite a lot of resources in open events and which are published. Please have a look at them. I see there are a lot of Romanians coming also in the webinar, or probably you are familiar with them. We just had last Friday the Open Education Week workshop, the 10th edition, the celebratory and anniversary one, where we celebrated the open education in Romania. And because we are Romanian, we are celebrating 8th of March and 1st of March and Mărțișor, which is I'm wearing it here, which is our wish to everybody, not only to the women and girls which are part here on a very beautiful and happy spring. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you, Diana. Lovely presentation as always, with very nice concrete examples, and I'm sure our participants can find something useful in each of those examples. There are a couple of questions, not necessarily specific for you, but I will ask you one. There is one in the Q&A. Is there somewhere a publication listing where they are located, where we can find the OER resources in Europe? I'm sure you, all of the speakers are aware of several of these type of repositories. Maybe you can share one or two with the audience.
Yes, I probably the most common one is OER Commons, which is the most popular one. In the past, we used to have a very good resource, which was open education by a website supported by the European Commission. Obviously, if you go on the Open Education Global, which is hosting, in fact, and organizing and coming with the idea of the open education week, you can have a lot of resources and assets which are open, and they are structured by country and by language. So I think those are quite useful. There are a lot of national repositories on that. And for the last probably 2 years, Moodle have implemented MoodleNet, for example, which is an environment which allows you to put editable version on of your open educational resources and then share it. But I know that Fiona have a project where they've been looking exactly at this, so probably she will say a bit more about that.
Okay, thank you, Diana. OER Commons was one of the repositories I was also thinking of. I will kindly ask the other speakers to answer in the Q&A to this question. Maybe they can have some other ideas. I see that Fabio is writing in the chat as well. Okay, thank you, Diana. We'll come back to you at the end for the Q&A session. And now I will move to the third speaker of the session. Again, it is a very big pleasure because I've known this speaker more or less from the same time since I've known Diana. And the next speaker is Carmen Holotescu. She is coming from the Ioan Slavici University of Timișoara, where she is a professor and the dean at the Faculty of Engineering, also the director of the Center for Open Education and Blockchain. She has big experience with OERs. Together with Diana, she has been a strong promoter of OER in Romania for the past 15-20 years, and I am sure that her experience will be very valuable to our participants. Carmen, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Vlad. Hello, everyone. I'm very glad to be here with you in this day, which is part of the Open Education Week. And also, I'm very proud to wear my mărțișor like Diana. And Sorry, I have to drink. I don't know what happened. I think it's better to come after Fiona. Be something with my throat. Sorry.
Okay, then we will make a switch until Carmen solves her voice
Yeah.
issues. I hope that everything will be fine. Fiona, is that okay with you?
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, you are already prepared. Then let me just briefly introduce you as well. It is also
Yes.
a great pleasure to introduce Fiona. Uh, I don't know her as long as I've known Diana and Carmen, so I cannot say that we worked together for 15 years. But I kept a close look on her for the past period because she was a speaker in previous EdenNap webinars. Fiona is a researcher at the Baden-Württemberger Cooperative State University in the Department of Educational Management and Lifelong Learning, and she is also involved in several projects related to education, e-learning and OERs, and she will present a very interesting good practice and some case studies related to open educational practices and resources. So please, Fiona,
Yes.
the floor is yours.
I hope that this works now. I kind of can't click on the button where I start my presentation, and I don't know why that is.
Maybe try F5. It should work.
Okay, let me check. Nope, it doesn't.
On Windows, I don't know. On
maybe if I like close this window and give me a minute to not start this. Oh, I think my PowerPoint has left me. I think I need to restart the program, and then we should be back. Sorry, everyone. Slight
no problem.
Technical. No, yep, yeah, now it's working. Okay, so you should be able to see my slides, but not my notes, right?
Yes, perfect.
All right, great. So yeah, happy Open Education Week, everyone, and hello. I'm Fiona Schmidbauer. I've already very nicely been introduced. Today I'm here as part of the ENCORE network, which is short for European Network for Catalyzing Open Resources in Education. And I am bringing with me, let's say, a tool for identifying or evaluating the innovative potential of open educational practices, which is the ENCORE Plus Innovation Evaluation Framework that we have been working on over the past months. Before I introduce the framework, I want to say a few quick words to the project that I work for, ENCORE Plus. It is in year 3 now. It's Erasmus Plus funded, and I'm very happy to say that we're not only a project, we have become a network. The Scan Me QR code you can see there is the link to our LinkedIn group, where we kind of connect as a network that we are of European actors in and around OER. Our main goal is, of course, to support the uptake of open educational resources in Europe. And we're trying to do this by staying connected and exchanging good practices, and also developing viable communities of stakeholders in the field of OER. This is the initial partners that we started out as, 9 partners. And this is our logic, our ecosystem that we operate by. In the beginning of the project, we identified 5 key challenges of OER in Europe, and then we decided to address them from 4 thematic perspectives, which is policies and practice, quality, OER technology, and also innovation and business models, which is why we can, as a network, pretty much contribute to everything with something that we're doing. Today, it's innovation. I guess that I do not have to define OER, because I think, are all on board with what OER are. If not, please stop me there or ask in the chat. I'm gonna take a quick look. I think we're good. So in the past two presentations, and also in general, we have all heard a lot about the innovative potential of OER. Of course, OER can reduce costs. They can support student readiness, also lifelong learning, provide education for disadvantaged peoples, making it more diverse, and remove barriers. But when you look at the literature of OER and innovation, there's usually two strands. The one strand is that OER is used as the innovation itself. So, for example, traditional teaching or educational materials are substituted by OER. And of course, that in itself is innovation, because OER is innovative material. But the second strand of innovation in OER can be seen as kind of a much more transformative way of changing the whole practice around an open educational resource. And this kind of ambiguity is seen in the literature when we look at OER and innovation. And it's also the thing that's really interesting for us, right? When we talk about OER, we often talk also about the whole practice that comes with those resources. And actually, I found a few parallels to Fabio's presentation before. The examples of open educational practices that you named, Fabio, we've also collected quite a few here. Quite a few open educational practices influenced by OER, service vectors for innovation, as you can see here, for example, the accreditation, of course, the course creation, the way you teach or train, lifelong learning, those are all practices that can be innovated or like influenced in an innovative way by OER. And what we wanted to do in Encore is kind of provide a tool or like a shared vocabulary or typology to look at OER initiatives or offers that also ignite innovation. And for this, we have created or developed an innovation evaluation framework. It's actually like the brain behind all of this is my colleague Rob Farrow. Some of you might have heard of him. He and his team did a lot of work on this framework that I'm going to introduce to you in the next few slides. Basically, we've designed this framework to look at how practice is transformed by OER and to make those open educational practices tangible. And also to manage to kind of talk about open educational practices and innovation with a shared vocabulary across Europe. Because, as I said, we're a European network. This means we want to get people together, get people talking, exchanging cases, exchanging good practices. And this works best when you kind of have a frame that you can sort your case in, and not only compare, but cooperate and learn together on the basis of a shared framework. Theorizing innovation, it's there because Rob actually put a lot of research into this framework. A lot of research went in. He collected over 40 case studies for this framework, and through OER, as I said, OER is innovative itself, but it also ignites innovation by changing the way we work, teach, or learn, so the whole practice. So for the framework, this is kind of the theoretical base of it. We have tried to place it on several cases of innovation that come from business. And we've not only tried like building a theoretical base, but also to synthesize a universal typology for OER business models and build a reflective, descriptive, and not competitive, but cooperative tool. I will give you a little sneak peek or look into how the framework what the framework looks like, what we have included in it, and how organizations or OER offers or initiatives can kind of reflect, evaluate, and describe their OER innovative practice through this framework. So of course, we start off with some basic information. What is the offer that you're making around OER as an institution, as an individual, as an organization, to kind of frame and compare different case studies. Then we focus on the strategy as well, reflecting the OER or the innovation strategy kind of behind this OER offer. Here we've used the defenders and prospectors approach, which is always split into a binary, which means you have two options. One's the very traditional one, and the other is the innovative approach. And this is kind of an offer for OER initiatives to reflect their own strategy or their own approach, and identify their own priorities and focus areas in their organization strategy. It is not there to give the right answer. So for example, when you look at the target group, do you want to target a traditional existing market, or do you want to target new markets? Of course, there's not a right answer that we can give. It's more that we ask you the right question so that you as an organization initiative can kind of get into reflecting, okay, who are we offering this to? And this is basically the sense or the meaning of this whole framework. Then the next one is a business model typology that we have developed in Encore as well. There are 4 major categories and 14 subcategories. And this is also for OER initiatives kind of reflecting how do I stay sustainable in practice. Of course, it's often a merge of more than one of those categories, and it's also a way of thinking of new ways or new ideas to stay sustainable as an OER initiative, because as we know, this is often a major problem. And then two more sections. One is pedagogy and technology. Of course, we ask the organizations, okay, how are people teaching, learning, and which technology are they using in your initiative? And then the OER implementation itself is, of course, also included. So here we use the SAMR framework, which I think is a great way of kind of describing or evaluating an OER implementation. It goes from substitution to redefinition, and I've mentioned this in the beginning. Substitution is the less transformative, innovative way of implementing OER, while redefinition is the most. So when we substitute, for example, traditional educational material through OER, it's innovation because OER is innovative material itself, but redefinition is something that Diana described in her presentation, and changing the whole teaching and learning practice of the students, for example, by making them co-creators, and not only substituting traditional materials with OER, but like changing the whole way around it. And I think this SAMR model is a great way of kind of reflect, okay, in my initiative, how are we implementing OER right now? Is it possible, or do we want to kind of heighten the implementation? Do we want to get it to a different level? Then of course, the framework offers a stakeholders analysis, where we've used the UPIC model, which helps initiatives that take this or that fill in this framework to kind of know who are our stakeholders, and then also what value proposition do we have for them to identify. And also we use the diffusions of innovations theory based on Rogers to kind of identify, because innovation works differently on different stakeholders. And with this, we want to we want to give initiatives the possibility to reflect how their practice encourages their stakeholders to use the OER and innovative approaches they're offering. So this is basically the section to reflect your OER implementation on different levels and for different stakeholders. What is important for a stakeholder to take up my OER implementation? Then, of course, we have included barriers and enablers, and a concluding reflection section that is kind of for the user of this framework to overall reflect again on, okay, how innovative is my OER initiative or my OER offer. And also the great thing about this is it will be openly licensed under CC BY. It will be openly accessible to organizations, businesses, institutions, individuals, etc. So you can not only reflect your own open educational practices regarding the innovation, you can also look at what others do, get inspirations there. So this is the plan for this whole thing to kind of live. Where we are right now is this. We have only closed the survey for filling in the framework a week ago. So I'm not going to present data today, but we got 57 responses, 49 of them were usable. We have quite the wide geographical spread and also quite some big OER initiatives in our survey. There will be a publication on this, of course, on the framework. And as I said, it will be CC BY, so everyone can kind of evaluate and reflect their own open educational practices. Then there will be 2 other publications coming, one on drivers, enablers, barriers, and challenges, and then an innovation showcase. If you want to follow those, please visit our website, join our LinkedIn group. This is basically where we post everything we do and kind of advertise it to the outside. I'm going to leave this here for a second so that everyone can scan the QR code. And then there's another very, it's actually, it's rather a personal request because I'm doing another event upcoming Monday at 10:30. Which is about OER quality and quality of OER repositories. And I am going to present another framework there, which is a quality transparency framework for OER repositories, because we in Encore, as I said, are a European network project, so we kind of love frameworks. And if you want to get in touch, of course you can. Here's the contact data of me and my colleague Rob Ferrer, who is basically responsible for the framework that I've just introduced. Thank you for your attention, and yeah, now I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Fiona. The Encore Plus project is one which I am following closely since I heard about it. So I encourage people to follow you as well.
Thank you.
And also to attend the events you promote. I remind people to ask questions either in the chat or in the Q&A. There is no specific question at this point for you, Fiona, but we will come back in the end for Q&A session.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. Carmen, are you okay now? Can we come back to you? Microphone, please.
Yes, thank you. I'm well.
Okay.
The things happened a few minutes ago. So thank you again for having me as a presenter here. I will present a project which is also implemented by Polytechnica University of Timișoara. I'm a member of this project, which is called EPSI4O Connecting Romania through Blockchain. And discussing about this project, I would like to present you a few things about how verifiable credentials can be enablers for open educational practices. We all are creators, actors, and witnesses of the process of opening up education, in the sense that we see that we learn for continuously the training, the learning and teaching processing are delivered by in all settings, traditional, informal or non-formal. We see different paths for learning, and so we need some credential solutions in which the same validity to be given to formal and non-formal education, to have stackable credentials, to be able to share work-based experiences, to encourage mobility and to recognize also online mobility, to be trust and transparency in all these learning and credentialing processes. There are priorities in education that we know worldwide and in Europe. I will not insist on this because my colleagues spoke about this before. But I would like to tell a few things about the strategy related to European digital credentials for learning, a strategy which was designed and presented 1.5 years before. And speaking about this strategy, European digital credentials for learning respond to the need of the citizen to easily share their diplomas, transcripts of records, and other certificates of learning achievement in, as I said, formal, informal, and non-formal settings in a secure and digital way. More than this, we have an approach for micro-credentials in Europe. And I want to recognize here the effort of the European Training Foundation for conceiving guidelines for micro-credentials. Micro-credentials are seen as certifying the learning outcomes of short-term learning experiences in which open educational practices are used, in which open educational resources or massive open online courses are integrated. And micro-credentials could offer a flexible and targeted way to help people acquire new knowledge, to upskill and reskill their competencies. Therefore, when we speak about all these changes in education, we need to redesign the way educational credentials are issued, stored, displayed, and verified, bringing new opportunities for flexible and open participation in traditional education and in lifelong learning for upskilling and reskilling. And speaking about the new way for redesigning these credentials, verifiable credentials were defined, and they are temper evident and privacy respecting credentials with specific metadata and proofs requested by the holder, by the student, by the learner, and issued by a competent authority, which is called trusted issuer, and where the authorship can be cryptographically verified. And these standards, these models are defined by W3C or by the Digital Credential Consortium, which consists of top universities around the world. This model can be implemented by using the blockchain technology, which is the technology, the emerging technology of the fourth industrial revolution. The technology comes with the characteristics of security, transparency, and integrity, and which can build a trusted, robust, scalable, and flexible decentralized credentialing ecosystem. And using this technology, using blockchain, the European Blockchain Partnership, which was launched 4 years ago, together with the European Commission, have implemented, and also they are coordinating, the European Blockchain Services infrastructure, EPSI, which is the most important blockchain project of Europe. In fact, is a project for decentralized government, a project which brings cross-border decentralized credentialing ecosystem for issuing verifiable credentials, besides other 6 use cases. So this EPSI comes with 7 use cases. One of these use cases being related to verifiable credentials with university diplomas and also with micro-credentials. And Polytechnica University of Timișoara entered in the process of issuing piloting these verifiable credentials on EPSI by implementing the project EPSI for All Connecting Romania through Blockchain, a project that started 2 years ago that has 2 partners, the executive unit for financing higher education, research, development, and innovation from Bucharest, and also Polytechnica University of Timișoara, a project which has a few aims and a few scopes to set up a node for the EPSI network, to create, to implement, to conceive a credential system for issuing verifiable credentials on EPSI at national level. Also, we have developed 3 mini-MOOCs related to blockchain and EPSI based on micro-credential approach. And also we try to develop, to enlarge the blockchain community in Romania and also in Europe. This is the website of our project, and the node that was set up during our project comes to enlarge the trust of the EPSI network that comprises now, as you can see, more than 40 nodes around Europe. We have in Romania 3 nodes at this moment, and a new node will be installed at Polytechnica in the next months. Speaking about the actors of the model of verifiable credentials, we speak about TAO, a trusted accreditation organization, which usually is the Ministry of Education. Then we speak about the university that issue verified credentials on EPSI, which is a trusted issuer. Then we speak about the central actor, which is the holder, the student that ask for university diplomas or for the micro-credentials from the trusted issuer, and that holds all these verified credentials in his or her digital wallet, choosing to whom to demonstrate these credentials, to a new university in which the holder wants to continue the studies, or to a company in which he or she wants to work. So the central actor, as I said, is the holder, which holds all the credentials in the digital wallet and is the owner of all this information. Here the actors seen in a diagram, and using this model of verifiable credentials, the process of issuing the credential the process is impossible to fake, it is easy to verify, and it is based on open standards. Together with other pioneer universities in Europe, and together with two European universities alliances, Polytechnica University of Timișoara took part in a program which is called EPSI Early Adapters, a program that ran, as you can see, from July 2021 till May 2022. And in this program, there were 6 success stories in which the diploma use case, the verifiable credentials on EPSI, were issued for different open educational scenarios. You can see that there were transcripts of records. It was a story about municipality credentials, a story about micro-credential, one about license to practice, one about European qualification passport for refugees, and the one that was implemented by Polytechnica University of Timișoara together with University of Athens and University of Lille. It's a cross-border scenario in which Anca, a student that had her bachelor degree from Polytechnica University of Timișoara, could follow a master degree at University of Athens and then a doctoral program at the University of Lille, having in her digital wallet the verifiable credentials proving her learning passes in these 3 universities, and having all these 3 verifiable credentials, she can then to apply for working in an institute or in a company. This was so our success story, which was built with very professional teams of from Greece and from France, and also with the whole support of EPSI team from Brussels. Also, to learn about blockchain and about EPSI, we have developed a MOOC for the participants. We will issue micro-credentials on EPSI, and all this MOOC was based on open educational practices, integrating open educational resources, other MOOCs, and being based on group projects and collaborative works. Also, we had many studies and many webinars and conferences trying to build up, to enlarge the community, knowing and using the EPSI use cases in Romania. And now we enter in the new wave of EPSI Early Adapters program, the 3rd wave, together with other universities and institutions from Romania. In fact, in this new wave, there are more than 150 organizations from Europe. Also, as a part of our project, we'll come with new proposals for including in the new laws of education policies related to verifiable credentials for university diplomas and also for micro-credentials. And you can find in these 2 reports I put on the slide, on the last slide, many other examples related to uses of EPSI in other countries, and also in these reports, our project is mentioned too. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Carmen. This field of micro-credentials and blockchain in education is quite an emerging one, and it is of great interest. Therefore, there were some questions in the chat specifically for you, and I would quickly address two of them. So one is about if there are any differences and overlapping areas between the EPSI system and the ESCO descriptors of skills and competencies. So this would be a first question.
The standards that EPSI uses, yes, take information for all the existing standards. So it's nothing new, but all the information are issued, are stored in trust technology, which is blockchain. So EPSI is connected also with other standards, and also it's now important work to integrate EPSI also with European identity.
Okay, thank you. And the second question related to your presentation: how can a university make use of micro-credentials in their open access courses that are widely recognized at national and international level? Is there any organization which approves it, just like indexing agencies for research journals or any other mode?
Sorry, I think I didn't understand very well the last part of, in fact, the question.
Yeah, so there are actually two questions. One is, how can a university make use of micro-credentials in their already known open access courses? And the second one, but they are connected, if there is any organization which approves these micro-credentials, just like the indexing agencies for research journals.
So now there is a work at all the national levels to implement, to have policies for micro-credentials. Till now, so there are not these kind of short trainings. There are not new, but new is the way that new is the way that they can be accredited, recognized, using these new standards, these new recommendations for micro-credentials. And also is a large work at the level of Erasmus Plus projects, in which these projects can help the national agencies to design micro-credentials for different levels of education. So it's not a super agency to index all these programs. We have different standards in which we have recognized them, and we can design them, and we have different standards for quality for them.
Thank you, Carmen. I think Fabio and Diana want also to jump in on regarding this topic. So Fabio, you are first, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that this is not compulsory to have it recognized by an agency. We see many cases of universities or even large professional schools that are actually, let's say, they stay with their traditional diploma, which is recognized by the accreditation agency, and then on top of that, they provide micro-credentials depending for third mission activity, or also for parts of the courses. And this is something that they can do for whatever reason. And the issue is then it's up to the university to make sure that, and here is where blockchain comes in, you can stack these different pieces into a diploma or some let's say longer periods of study, but it's not necessary. I mean, you can start from tomorrow. If you are European, you can start from today, because if you are registered in Europe, you have this system which was presented, so you can start issuing them from today. But if not, from tomorrow, because it's really simple in technological terms, and you don't need any special accreditation. The thing is, the choice is a strategic one. It's not really a technical one.
Thank you for jumping in, Fabio. Diana, you still want to add something? Yeah.
Yes, quite similar with Fabio. The only two major things is with micro-credentials, personally, I strongly oppose any national agency validation or recognition, because that will probably completely delay and destroy the idea of micro-credentials. For that, we have a lot of training programs, existing ones, and different structures in national levels or anywhere else at European level, which validates training programs on different specific subjects or specialities. Micro-credentials are adding exactly this digital part of it with two options. One, hopefully they will focus more on open education, all of them. They will be digital. That's quite clear that micro-credentials look at digital validation and digital recognition of digital certificate, more or less. And the one which I consider very valid and very important is the stackability of them. So how you can really add them, and you can put them in a chain or one after another, not necessarily from the same university or same provider, not necessarily from the same country, but to be able to recognize them. Obviously, that's not simple. Very few universities have really policies on how to look at micro-credentials, especially if you're looking also at the open aspect of the micro-credentials and how to create the stackability of them. One issue which is quite strongly is also for the European University Alliance. Usually nowadays, at least the European University Alliances are trying between themselves to be able to recognize this and to create this stackability of the micro-credentials or any other digital courses. Obviously, EPSI and any major blockchain infrastructure which is dedicated for accreditation and certification will be a major help if EPSI will be able to be fully implemented, at least in the micro-credential sector, or if not in fully diplomas or something like this, will create the possibility of really being able to exchange much more easier between different education providers, the courses, the recognition, the validity of competency. Obviously, as well as the micro-credentials will be designed and planned and to reach competencies they will look to, if they have a clear framework in which they are developed by the education provider, either universities or companies, as successful they are going to be.
Thank you. As I mentioned, this topic is of great interest, and you can see that all of our speakers have already knowledge about this. So also I want to thank all of you for sharing valuable links in the chat. So those already answered some of the questions of our participants. Unfortunately, we don't have time for all of the questions. And in the end, I would like to pick your minds on something. So Diana mentioned in her presentation about using students for creating OERs. So this is something like open assessment practices. So we try to find many times different types of assessing our students, and this is one example in the literature of asking students to create OERs. I was wondering if you are, all of you, if you are familiar with this activity, and what is usually the students' perception, because students are not used to this type of activities. And I'm curious, what have you seen? How are students feeling about this type of assessment for them to create OERs? And you can jump in whichever order suits you.
I will start because I presented just very briefly. We have several published papers, in fact, and also 2 reports which we are looking at how the students are perceiving this. there are two options. One is the immediate perceiving of the students, which is always a bit finding it challenging, especially because, as I said, they don't really understand what Creative Commons license means, how you can really need to build up a product which will be able to be reused after that or be published with the Creative Commons license. That you need to look very much, very carefully also into the content, the publishing tools, everything. So it's a full process which they need to understand. That's one. So it's a bit challenging, but they quite like it at the end. That's based on all the evaluation which we have done probably in the last 6 years or something like that. And what is more interesting is that sometimes, for example, the students which I have, they are sometimes, so this is more as a personal observation. If, for example, they do this OS in 1 year, and then they are students in the next year, and then they see that their objects, their things which they developed are used by a lot of other professors, colleagues, and students, and they're very proud of this. Quite several of them have came back to me and said that they are so proud when they, especially with the guides, which we developed for the virtual campus and the digital education, that the guides which were created by themselves are published. They're public also in our university website. All professors are using it, and they have feedback from professors saying what is good and what is not good, and how they are using it. So it's beside of the learning process on open education is also probably a very good motivation thing for the students, or at least that's our view.
Thank you, Diana. Fabio, I
If
saw
I can
that you also.
complement, yes, if I can complement it, totally agree with what Diana says. I think two other things to keep in mind are the subject we're talking about. So I've seen incredible things, for example, in software development, when what your assignment is basically to go on GitHub and to write some lines of software that the others must accept. So you can really have real life assessment by creating actually code, so openly access code. And that is something which is so normal for the students that when the educator is asking this, they are like, wow, fantastic. This is really what I need to do. And the second thing is, it depends a lot in my understanding about, of course, it relates to the student's perception, the learner's perception, but I think the main obstacle and the main enabler there is still the educator, is the teacher. So if the teacher is able to explain the reason behind this, I mean, what Diana was saying before, hundreds and hundreds of hours, hours of lost and thrown intelligence of people just to say that you know how to do this, but if you think about this seriously, I mean, it's a loss of energy. It's an incredible loss of energy. So there is also a value issue there, and I think young people will understand this, and it's a matter of really putting it into the right perspective from the point of view of the evaluator. Of course, if you come there with the idea, let's innovate, they don't really care. But if you say, let's do something useful, for example, let's work on on Wikipedia, on something important in your language, let's work on the sustainable development pages on Wikipedia, let's make that booming, they will do it. There are cases of students even in primary school that have been doing this because they're passionate about it. So, but there it's the educator who needs to, it's not about technology, it's not even about licenses. Wikipedia, licenses already embedded. So it's really about the capacity to convince them based on values and not on innovation or other buzzwords. But actually, I think it can work. It's when you have the educator and the strategy, it works, I would say.
Thank you, Fabio. I totally agree. Fiona, would you like to jump in on this topic of?
Just to say that I totally agree, and I think when involving students, it's always about relating to their to what kind of motivates them. So as Fabio said, if you propose the right value to the students for them to, for example, develop OER or contribute to existing OER and thus changing their learning practice, then they will probably do it out of their own motivation. Yeah.
Thanks. Carmen, an opinion about this topic?
Yes. I would like to say that our students, my belief is that our students could become co-creators of open educational resources only if their teacher is an open educator. If they have examples for their own teacher about his or her contribution to creating such resources, if in the process of teaching and learning, they use open education resources and massive open online courses. And also if they see that the work of the students in the previous years is not lost, if they continue the work of the students teacher had before. Thank you.
Thank you. So the conclusion of this question is, and I think of this webinar, and it comes back to us teachers, and the way that we present this type of activities, also the open assessment practices, will be reflected in the way that the students perceive them. So it is up to us to present them in such a way that students understand the importance, necessity, and the utility of usefulness of them. I want to thank again all the speakers for accepting to be present here today and for showcasing such nice, good practices. I want to invite all of you to Eden's annual conference, which will happen this year in Dublin, Ireland, from the 18th until the 20th of June. And the paper submission is getting very close, more precise on Friday. So please, maybe there will be some extension, but we don't know yet. So please hurry up and submit your papers. And also keep in mind that the Open Education Week organized by Eden is not finished yet. We still invite you tomorrow for another webinar on sustainable models of education post-COVID, the case of extended squared, moderated by Christotea Herodotou, with Marcello Milrad, Kronis Kinigos, and Marianti Griziotti, who will present. So from 1 p.m. Central European time tomorrow, please be present at this webinar. Again, thank you all, and I'm sure that from all these presentations, you found something which you can use to innovate in your education. Happy Women's Day again, and have a wonderful day and spring. Goodbye, everyone.